It is now 18 minutes to 9. 3 years after losing a preliminary ruling at an employment tribunal, Maya Forstater has won. A judge ruled yesterday that she was unfairly discriminated against when a think tank did not renew her contract after tweets about people self-identifying as women. Initially, a judge had said in 2019 that her views weren't worthy of respect in a democratic society. Then there was a subsequent ruling to say that they were, as gender-critical views, protected under the Equality Act. Maya Forstater is here in our studio now. Good morning.
Good morning.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How does it feel?
Amazing. I've been vindicated and found to have been a victim of discrimination, which is what I said all along, for having completely ordinary beliefs about sex.
The beliefs that you then said, and the judge has now agreed, on the basis of which those views meant that your contract wasn't renewed. Would you like to go back to your old job at the think tank?
No. I mean, if this hadn't happened to me, I wouldn't have gone on to do what I'm doing now, which is I founded an organisation called Sex Matters, which is campaigning for clarity on sex in law and policy. So in some ways, I've got CGD to be thankful for that.
The Centre
for Global Development, where I worked before.
What would you say to someone who fears that this ruling, finding that you were unfairly discriminated against, will lead to a free-for-all in what people say on social media or indeed say in person to trans people?
It is a victory for freedom of speech. People should be able to say most things on social media, but people should also treat their colleagues with respect, treat people with respect in the workplace. And this doesn't change that at all. My judgment was never about harassing trans people. That's not what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was to talk about, at the time, the Gender Recognition Act and how laws work in relation to sex.
And a lot of what you said was about people self-identifying as women. What would you call someone who has been a man but who has been through extensive treatment, including surgery, and has lived as a woman, gone through a whole process and not self-identified? At the end of all of that, what would you call them, a woman?
No, they're still a man. I mean, in terms of, for example, sport, all of the sports governing bodies are starting to decide.
I don't mean sport. Let's leave sport aside for a moment, because absolutely. But sport, because it's a competitive process, let's leave that aside for a moment. I mean in the broader philosophical sense of someone who has gone through everything possible in the medical world, and there are procedures that are possible, including surgery in the genital area. At the end of all of that, you would still say there is no way that you would be prepared to call them a woman.
It's not possible to change sex. I mean, I would treat somebody with respect. I would, use their name. But when it comes down to a question of whether someone can change sex, cosmetic surgery doesn't change somebody's sex. It's impossible to change sex. And most people who transition don't go through surgery, and that's their choice. That's completely valid. So who am I to say whose transition is more valid than another? But no one's transition changes their sex, and there are some situations where that matters.
So what is your hope now for what this ruling represents?
One really important thing is that it created a precedent that people shouldn't be discriminated at work for expressing perfectly ordinary beliefs about sex and gender. And that means, teachers, doctors, social workers, people whose decisions affect other people's safety and, fairness in sport, all those kinds of areas. People are going to be able to speak honestly and truthfully, and that protects everyone's rights, women's rights and trans people.
So is it your hope that it is a milestone alongside what the recent developments in the sporting world?
Absolutely. I think the landscape has changed so much from 3 years ago when I first started tweeting about this quite fearfully to now. Government ministers are talking about it. People are starting to recognise that we have to be able to have these debates in a grown-up way, and that's all that I wanted.
And you're on air this morning because you've had this victory in the employment tribunal. What has the process in between been like? You lost your income and your career?
Yes, absolutely. I've been cancelled by the Centre for Global Development, and then really by the whole sector, the international development sector. Which
you were not able to get another job?
I wasn't, not in that sector. And in the last year, I've set up my own organisation, so I set up Sex Matters. But the sector that I worked in is ignoring that this happened, and I know that there are people in every sector who are afraid to say what they think about sex.
So how did you fund your legal case? Was that through supporters? You've obviously had high-profile support from J.K. Rowling, amongst others.
Yes, so it was crowdfunded by thousands of people. I had high-profile support from J.K. Rowling, but most of the money from the case came from people making donations of £10, £20, and sending me messages telling me how important it was. And that was really the thing that kept me going.
Maya Forstater, thank you very much.
Thank you.